This conference will now be recorded.
All right. The time being 4:45 p.m., I'd like to call the meeting of July 29th, 2021 to order. Before we get started, if you are joining us virtually, please mute your microphone during the meeting unless you want to speak. Otherwise, background noise will interfere with the meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First up is the review and approve the minutes from July 8th, both public and non-public.
I have one issue on,
Have no issue, or you have one
I
issue?
have one issue.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Thank you.
A little bit.
No, I can't. I just can't.
All right. Any issues?
Yep.
Okay.
Said I had one.
I thought you said you didn't have any.
No,
I even asked you twice. Sorry.
I didn't. I answered twice.
I know. Sorry.
Page 2 of 4, Selectman Constantino. Pat spoke about the stove for the senior center. A stove oven has been donated and she asked to sell or donate the old one. Pat also asked about funds when we do sell it, going back to the senior center. Fund or kitty, however you want to say it. And that's not put in here.
It's something about putting the money back into it.
Back into the senior center monies. Yep. That was a request, right? The board didn't, no, we didn't act on it. It was what I had asked the board. And there was a discussion on it afterwards. Back and forth, and then there was no decision on it.
In that same paragraph, there's probably no decision about a cookout for the staff.
Yeah, right after that, I asked about the cookout for the
Yeah.
staff. Right after that, so that's accurate.
All right. Any other suggestions or changes? Hearing none. All those in favor?
I think technically we need a motion first, don't we?
Yeah, I think we do probably. I was just gonna
Maybe
bypass
I
that.
missed it.
No, I don't think I
so.
made a motion.
Well,
Motion to accept the minutes of July 8th. With the as amended.
second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. The non-public minutes of July 8th. The only comment I have on there is, can I say it? There's a name that's misspelled frequently.
Non-public.
The non-public on no, the other one. Yeah. I'll go from the bottom, the second up, the second one up from the bottom. On page 1. The hyphenated name. But then if you go on page 2, hold on, I just saw it. Okay,
Kid Keeler's got 2 Ds, not 2 Ys. I think.
Non-public.
yeah, I wasn't trying to say name, I just, but I've seen it spelled. I'm like, wait a minute. So, all right. Any other,
Motion to accept the minutes with the amendments?
Well, okay.
Jessamine second.
second?
I
Any
haven't
discussion?
finished reading it yet, please.
Okay.
Okay.
All set? Okay. There's a motion, a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Those are-
Pass those around to,
Why, they're public.
No, they're not.
That's not,
Didn't we just vote to unseal them?
no, we
No,
just
we
approve,
voted to
accept them.
approve the minutes.
approve the minutes.
We didn't vote to unseal
Oh.
pass them this way.
We'll pass them down this way. All right. Next,
Is this new? I don't think I've ever had to approve non-public minutes.
them. We've been asking.
Sweet, okay, all right, well, I missed that memo.
You can't unseal them because there's personnel in it.
I thought it was odd.
Yeah.
All right. So now we move the minutes of July 15th to the floor for discussion. This is the public
Yes.
session minutes.
For the
No, I don't have
22nd,
them.
for the 22nd,
No, for the 15th,
for the 15th.
public session minutes for the 15th. Apparently we're behind on approving minutes.
Indeed. I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 15th as presented.
Ruggles second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say
Hold
aye.
on.
Oh,
Wait a second.
sure.
I could see John's mouth moving.
This is not the one that we were just handed out.
Oh, which?
This is the one that Gail sent us a couple days ago.
Yeah, the public
Public
minutes
minutes.
from the 15th.
It's public minutes. Okay. Yeah, I read those.
Not the one.
Okay.
that-
All
good,
set?
thank
Yeah, you all set now?
I'm,
All right.
I'm on base.
Kids
here.
are-
Not the
all
one
right,
that we have
everyone-
for 30 seconds. So
This is approval of the July 15th public session minutes. There was a motion, a second. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. Now the non-public session minutes of July 15th. Now, John, you can
I
read
was
those.
wondering why you guys could all read so fast.
I read quickly, but not that quickly.
Who wrote these non-public minutes? You? It's under descriptions of matters discussed and final decisions made. Under Selectmen Jessamine questioned. That was Eric Pyra,
Which section are you on?
first page.
Description of matters discussed, final decision.
Oh, yeah.
You all agree with that?
Correct.
Yeah, I voiced concern as well, but we discussed it.
Yeah. But he initially asked the question. I'm not sure what it means on page 2 of 3. There are 2 paragraphs that begin with discussion, and then it begins with the person's name. And then that sentence, I'm not sure exactly what that means where it says in March, the word in before. It doesn't really explain what's going on.
So it's discussion of appointed versus elected.
I think down the road, we're gonna get caught up on that word. If there's ever a question for a year from now, we're gonna get stuck with that language that's put in there. Can we check? If it was, then fine. If it wasn't, we should probably find an alternative. My opinion.
Any other discussion on the non-public of July 15th?
Motion to accept the minutes.
Motion to
We can't say as amended. You're gonna check.
We,
Okay, but you're also gonna check on that other. And then you'll check on it, okay?
All right. So do we vote in, yeah, was there a second?
I made the motion.
I'll second it. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Public minutes of July 22nd.
Motion to accept the minutes of July 22nd, 2021, as written.
Second?
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? say aye.
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 Opposed? And non-public of July 22nd.
We're gonna get out of it that easy with it.
They're at the end. What's that?
I don't know, what is this?
Thank you.
This is the non-public.
No, this is mine.
Let's see.
Was the motion at the bottom by Joe, I think?
Hey, what now?
If you look on the bottom of page 1 of 1, I think that motion was made by you.
1 of 1.
Yeah.
I think it was.
On the bottom of 1 of 1, because I remember Joe.
I would take credit for it, even if I didn't make it, but I think I did.
Yeah. I know I had suggested it and then I was thinking, make a motion, Joe's making another one on it? And I, yeah, I never made it as a motion. You did. Pat did second it.
All right. So is that a change?
All right. Or I did. I don't, I might
Okay.
have seconded.
She'll check it.
I make a motion to accept the non-public minutes of 7/22/2021 as revised if necessary.
All right.
I don't agree with the comments on page 2 of 2 under the discussion administration.
We're in the non-public.
I realize it was 2 sets.
Oops.
So this is,
I don't think anyone did it because she had
I'll
opposed.
second. Scanlon
So this
second.
is the page 1 of 1. Okay. So this is approval of the non-public sessions, page 1 of 1. For 2B. Any other discussion on page 1 of 1? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion passes. Now we're on to the second set of minutes for the non-public session.
I make a motion, we table this so we can talk about it in non-public.
The motion to table it, is there a second? I'll second it. Any other discussion? We'll table it. Do we have to vote on a table? Yeah.
Yes.
All those in favor of tabling this until we can discuss in a non-public session, say aye.
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 Motion passes, so we will table that until that, but we still give it back to Jeannie? Okay, do you want us to hold on to both sets?
Gonna talk about it?
Okay. All right, so I can't lose those.
One of 1.
Jeannie, did you get clarification on the donation? Okay. Okay. So, I know the dollar amount on that one. I don't know on the second one. We have 2 donations that we need to accept. The first. I do? Oh, look at that. I didn't see it. So make a motion to accept the donation in the amount of $1,000 from an anonymous donor for the Parks Commission. And I know that this is specifically for the fireworks show on August 7th.
I'll second that.
All right.
Um,
Second, yeah. Good.
You said anonymous donor, but there's a name on my agenda. Has that been published publicly?
It, well, when it was first presented, that person said they wished to be anonymous.
And I get that, yeah.
So, but apparently that's changed. So I'm conflicted.
Okay.
So that's all.
Well, anybody who's curious can go to the town website
right.
and look at the agenda.
They go to the bank. They can follow someone to the bank on that day. And the second one, oh, no, all those in favor of accepting the donation, please say aye.
Aye. And
Opposed?
thank you.
And thank you very much. That is greatly appreciated. That has allowed the Parks Department, in a sense, to almost double the fireworks on August 7th.
Fireworks.
No, it's very nice, because the Parks Department also upped their contribution. We already had $2,500 in the bank, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's
We have
it's
more.
nice. We have more. So
Yay.
we can shoot off twice as many, I guess. The next one is a donation from James Johnston Jr. for a donation in the amount of $300 to the Tilton Senior Center. Thank you, Mr. Johnston.
Was that a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept that amount, $300 from Mr. James Johnston.
Second?
Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
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 When did
Opposed?
that donation come in?
The date on the check is the 15th of July.
If you don't mind, would you save that so that I can send a letter back? Because we
Sure.
didn't get a copy of that.
And if I can say, it was from a Samberton resident. Very nice.
I know who it is.
Okay.
Just didn't get it in an email.
I know the street, that's all I know. All right. Next, we have Representative Julia Harvey. A legislative update. Thank you. You have to come up and sit in that chair and please speak into the microphone. And because he's not visible on TV,
Excellent. Thanks.
we also have Mr. Joe Kennedy,
Executive Council. Joe
Executive
Kennedy.
Counselor. He's hiding. He's not. No, he's not really. Well, thank you. If you could just make sure you press the button to turn that green. Thank you. And then just make sure you speak into the microphone because it's to help with the minutes. Thank you.
Right.
Do I have this twice?
Absolutely.
Listen, if you were at the meeting the other night with the technology,
No,
this,
no, that
this
was for-
is
I'm confused. Don't give me.
like the Taj
This is
Mahal.
the Taj Mahal of
Mhm.
technology after, and that was one of the things.
My goodness, that was a horror show.
I'm so glad Joe was there in person too.
Wish I was.
And I know Pat was trying
Yeah.
to call in, and
Horrible.
it was a little bit of a mess because some people were expecting a public hearing type of meeting, and others, the reps, myself and Rep Sylvia, just, well, we hadn't been acquainted with the situation enough. And I know a lot of other people hadn't either. But it actually I thought it turned out to be a productive meeting after all. So I was just going to say that, so some of the meeting was that it looks like Jim Gallagher from the DES, he's a dam engineer, is interested in pursuing a feasibility study for a dam. And as it happens, Belknap County is getting all this federal money. And it looks like we may be able to just fund this feasibility study. And that would include, so that would include the study, and they also need to do some dredging there. There was talk of putting in a rubber dam, which I'd never heard of, but so it looks like that's the next step. We're certainly going to take it up at the very next meeting at the Belknap County delegation to explore seeing what we can do like immediately for it, at least get a study underway. Would the BOS be amenable to having, putting that on their agenda to do more, to do an update or something in the future regarding Silver Lake? Do you want to put that on the agenda? Do you want me to see if Jim Gallagher will come to speak? And also, of course, it's a public meeting, so that way the control is someone has the, someone's chairing the meeting and can bring order to the meeting. It was a little difficult for me because I'm not a Belmont resident, and they sort of had control over the meeting. So, but we were the ones who
Yeah,
called
sure they
it.
did.
So, yeah, so that
Well-
would be great.
Well, wasn't the person that originally requested the meeting a Belmont resident?
Not
I thought
really.
that-
If it's a
Yeah,
Silver
but he lives
Lake
on Silver
Asso-
Lake, but he lives on the Belmont side of Silver Lake.
It's a Silver Lake Association that requested
Right.
the meeting, as far as I know.
Oh.
So they did not request a meeting, they requested action. And it was my idea to learn more about it. So I've still, that was my interest, was to learn more and then try to take action after that.
Well, they came to us for action.
Okay,
They came to us for action
and this would be the
because
place
they had
to.
already had a meeting with the
Okay.
dam and they got promises from them 6 or 7 years ago. And they didn't follow through on the promises. And so their call to us, their email to us wanted action. And so we wanted to get Jeannie involved and Jeannie's new to that whole situation and issue. And then you got involved and you're new to that issue. So respectfully, that's why you needed more information to get all of the whole picture involved. And so it was a good meeting for you, productive meeting for you to get that information. And now you can move forward and really listen to their concerns because this comes up in the last 12 years, it's come up at least 2 or 3 times that I've known of that they've been completely, totally flooded without notification or brought down to the ground zero level without notification. So it's very tough on them because it's tough on their property. And keep in mind too, we're taxing them. We're taxing them as waterfront property,
Mhm.
which is a very high level tax. They're getting taxed extra for waterfront property. And when you're in that kind of a situation and you can't enjoy your waterfront property because your house is flooded and your front yard is nothing but a lake, it's really not a very enjoyable waterfront property. And like there was some mention of it, I heard it, the audio was really bad and you couldn't hear on and off, but I could hear particularly Mr. Foote, who was online and said, we should have some type of an abatement, to the towns looking at it and saying, if we're going to get flooded all the time, well, we should be looked at it not as waterfront property any longer.
Hmm.
And that was one of the issues.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Thank you.
John?
So I'm not sure if this should be part of our regular agenda of a selectman meeting, or I think there's a lot of information that has to get out there and timely. And it will take quite a while to go over it in questions and answer. Maybe it should be a special meeting just devoted for that,
For the Silver Lake Association, you mean?
for that topic.
dam,
And
yep.
to work on it. Because I think it's probably going to be a series of stuff that will be discussed as opposed to just put on our agenda with other things,
I think that's actually, yeah, right on
special.
point, because first of all, you'll need a lot of facts, a lot of fact finding. So instead of just,
It'll help
Yeah.
organize it better.
yeah, to do some research on it. And we'll need to do that for the Belknap County delegation anyway, so I'll see what, not quite sure where to
The
start with
venue's
that,
going to be
but
the tough thing. That's,
but
I
maybe-
think that's, I can see that.
maybe
You're,
Mr.
you're wondering about the venue that would host something like that is going to be an issue where we can fit everybody in and have technology that works good.
here.
The question would be is if
It's
the Board
available,
of Selectmen
yeah.
would like to host it here at this
Yeah.
building, or if there's another venue, perhaps even at, well, the cafetorium at the high school or something like that. That might be. I think you
Well, how
saw
many
how many
people
people
were
were
there?
there.
How many people were there?
35, plus the people that were putting it on.
35.
Plus there was 20 online, maybe. I don't know. It was really
Yeah, it
hard
was
to
20
say.
on.
About 20 online,
Yeah.
okay,
Well,
so.
I mean, we had the bike
5.
public hearing and we had probably 50 people here. All right. Plus
We
the online,
could set this up differently and have a lot more chairs.
and the accommodation, not the online aspect of it. I think we can do it. So let's do it.
The combination, sure.
Oh, all right, I'll get back. Yeah,
Can I
Yeah.
interject? There is a method of being notified in advance where you can get text messages, email messages, but you have to opt in. And I'm not sure where to get the information to do that, but you can opt in on
On the website.
the web. What is the website?
Alerts to,
exactly.
Uh,
Oh, you're talking about the dam.
I'm
level
talking
stuff,
about the dam
oh, yeah, that's
issue.
right.
DES.
Right. DES had given that out.
There is a notification that's available if you opt in.
Yeah, he did say that the other day, and I
Yeah,
think I have it written at home.
And that's only been going like 6 months, and that was problematic. But he thinks that they've got the bugs worked out of it. Also, there's a videotape of it because the other rep, Mike,
Hmm.
yeah,
yeah.
videotaped it. So I don't know where that might be viewed if you're interested in actually
Yeah.
seeing what transpired in the room. But I have some knowledge of this issue as I've lived on Silver Lake for 25 years. The lake goes up and down. All the water from northern New Hampshire funnels into Lake Winnipesaukee and Lake Opeechee and Lake Winnisquam, and we're it. So all that water has to come right beside my house, and it can't exit. What did he say? That lake flushes 400 times a year, more than once a day, but it just can't spout out enough water when those events happen.
Mhm.
So the dam isn't rubber. The dam is called a rubber dam, but it has foundations and stuff that are solid fixtures. And the spillway gates or whatever did he say were some kind of a the spillway gates are rubber. And if the lake comes up too high, the water just flows over the top, and it's to keep the lake levels more or less consistent on Silver Lake. But that's an $8 million project.
Yeah,
And that's a
Yep.
ballpark figure from a guy who knows that kind of stuff. That would be a very important thing to the whole river system and the health of the river, and especially all the people around Silver Lake. And I never once felt like I didn't have waterfront property because the water was even closer to my house than it usually is. That said, the basement floods and it's a whole thing.
Interesting. What else you
Right,
got
well,
for
I don't want
us?
to, yeah, just, it's hard to segue on from that, but I
Sorry.
just, no, that's okay. That's important to the good background information. I'll just touch on a few things that we covered over the last House session and then ask for your opinions on some things that I'm thinking about writing for the upcoming session. I handed out this thing that the Department of Education put out about, and the only reason I handed out is a lot of people, other reps kind of want to avoid this topic as it's so controversial, but I think after reading it, it seems very straightforward to me, but there was a lot of misinformation out there. It's in regards to the divisive concepts language that was put in recently this last session, and it's when you read the actual what it does, it's very simple, and so it just simply is some language that implores educators and others working for the government to not teach that a person or group is inherently oppressive, superior, inferior, racist, or sexist. So it's simply to teach and treat all equally and without discrimination. And it doesn't prohibit the teaching of U.S. history, including but not limited to subjects of slavery, Native American population, et cetera. So I didn't want to belabor that, but just kind of hand that out.
Where does the overreach for determining the divisive concepts come from?
Where is the overreach?
So my question comes as a lifelong educator in terms of when and where do the ideas of divisive concepts come? This clarifies a few things for me. I'd already read the portions of the bill. I read HB 544 as well. So, but in terms of divisive concepts, when does the state government get into divisive concepts, even in the area of science? Okay, where people could say creationism versus the Big Bang Theory and what they believe and how that offends them. So where does the overreach and oversight come for these things? And how far does the reach of government now go? It's been, it's been an imposition on public education for a long time. The ability and the freedom that they don't have in the schools to even come up and be able to discuss as thoroughly as they possibly could the issues that have arisen, say, about religion over thousands of years have been limited because people are worried about being offended by that. So my question now becomes where do we stop with divisive concepts?
Thank you for the question. It's a great, I think what you're trying to ask is, practically speaking, how is this going to impact, say, a teacher that just wants to teach? And I actually, I'll admit, I've never even heard of divisive concepts. Over a year ago, I'd never even heard of it. But what I understand is, without getting too political about it, is, we don't want children to be taught that they are born in an inferior race. And I believe that's the
Or is it
gist.
superior? Because that is the gist of what's coming out of this when we look at critical race theory, when we take a look at how things are being approached, where we use terms like white privilege being interpreted incorrectly, because white privilege doesn't mean that my children or I am going to make more money, but it does mean that if we drive through a high crime neighborhood that is more ethnically diverse, we won't be targeted as we drive through in our car, which is the reality of what society is, not just here, but across the planet. So, and as I have argued, even with colleagues of mine in the education, critical race theory, race is a term that actually should be changed. It should be critical repression theory, because for 18,000 years, groups have been repressing other groups.
Yeah, and I think you can teach that according to this law. And what House Bill 544 stated originally is not what we ended up voting on.
Correct.
And I like this update. I didn't like telling people not to say things. It's counterintuitive for a equal rights type of law. So I think this is a good compromise, and it just, we don't want to discriminate against the children in schools for their race. I think that's as simple as it gets, but I'm not extremely well versed on how things have gone in real life stories. I've heard little tidbits here and there. I've heard complaints even about from parents in this state. And you think, well, it's not going to happen in Tilton schools. So, and like you said, it's a very complicated, complex issue, which I'm sure at any point one of us could violate some of this.
There's no
And,
doubt.
you know.
As an educator, my point is, and to fellow educators, and I have critiqued them. I teach civics, I teach AP United States politics and government. But my job is not to influence students. And unfortunately, we have educators at all levels, especially when you get to the collegiate level, who really want to bring their agenda and their political agenda into the classroom, which shouldn't. That's what should be castigated. And that's the personal aside on that, is that it's not my job to influence the teenagers in my classroom to think the way that I think. It's my job to allow them to see evidence from all sides and all perspectives, so that they can then develop their own opinions and go forward with their own opinions on the subjects. And, I think that's where educators should be evaluated at times, especially in the areas that can be considered controversial.
You're right. Well, thank you for bringing up and thinking about the issue in depth, because as you said, it's so complicated. We even have a law, I believe, in New Hampshire that says that you can't teach communism, I think. But I mean, that's probably, again, not enforced or whatever. So, but it's something to look at. And
Absolutely.
obviously teachers they're in the hot seat one way or the other. So an eye on it. Just touch on briefly. Okay, so I spent a lot of time with election integrity issues, and I was down in Wyndham with the audit. I volunteered for it. I was very concerned, and I even set up a sort of a webinar with somebody who who's a specialist in risk limiting audits, Philip Stark, who's a professor over at Berkeley, because I'm interested in writing some legislation to get not an audit per se, but more of a recount for after post-election system of random recounts, which would be just in 5 towns and 5 city wards. And it's not a full audit. It's a type of an audit recount that is statistics based. So it's quick. It's going to be more of a quick and cheaper method of proving that the audit was in fact correct. So long story short, he was actually at this, and he was one of the auditors in Wyndham. And so I got to talk to him a little bit more about the bill. And I don't know if you've been able to read the results from the Wyndham audit report, but I read through it, and obviously I'm sure some of you know that it was the folding machine that they used. You probably all heard that. Some of you have heard that. They borrowed a folding machine from the another town office, and it put folds over one of the candidates' names. And that caused some erroneous readings in the optical scanner. Well, that wasn't the only thing that was a problem. Is if you read the report, it's the setting dust they used when the ballots are printed. They're given a little light dusting to dry them quicker so they can package them up. And as it happens, all this dust was accumulating in the machines. So the more dusty the machines, the worse the more erroneous the readings are. So it looks like, we have some work to do with that company that manages our systems, LHS. They hadn't been possibly maintaining the machines. It's supposed to be cleaned out. So hopefully that's going to be cleaned out for the next election. And on a side note of that, just for side information, it came up if a town wants to get rid of their ballot boxes, which some towns are going to look to do. We couldn't find anywhere where it says who decides if you use ballot boxes or you do hand count. So I was like, we have to find this out. So as it turns out, people call the Secretary of State and Senator Guida got involved. It's the select board, you folks, can make the final call. Some people thought it was the moderator, but turns out it's the select board. So the thought, I don't have an opinion on it at this point, but I'd love to hear your opinions.
Are you suggesting that we go through every ballot and count them by hand?
Nope, I did not suggest that. I thought.
Ballot box?
What?
You mentioned having a ballot box. That means that you stick your ballots in the box, right? Correct?
I was talking about the ballot boxes. I mean the machines. Yeah, I was talking about the.
Oh, the machines.
Yeah, and
Okay. Okay.
I researched.
I read ballot boxes. It's like I'm not.
It's going backwards.
Because it's going to come up across towns. Other towns are already trying to get rid of their machines to go to a hand count. I'm not proposing that at all.
Again, that gets right to my concern.
What's that?
I've been there at the end. And if we had to count all those ballots at the end of the night and then go through them again and again to make sure, we'd be there till 2 a.m.
I am not suggesting that at all.
Good deal.
I think if we clean the machines, and they got a pretty good rating from the auditors because they're so old. They're hard to hack because they're actually quite ancient technologically. So their hacking footprint is what they call it. It's so small, it's hard to get into it.
How can they be hacked? They're not hooked into the internet.
Cards. There's a card that goes in.
I understand that. So they would be hacked at the state level.
They could be. I mean, I'm not an expert, but
at the local level.
At the local level, the card.
And the only person, I've never even seen the card. The town clerk would have the card, correct? I suppose that person could hack in.
Machines are always hacked. One of the results of, if you look into it, is machines are always vulnerable no matter what. So, they don't use machines in Canada. And I think in Britain, they're illegal. So, because they're always vulnerable to being hacked. I'm not saying we need to throw them out, but it has to be acknowledged. Anyway, so if you have any, if you have any thoughts on election integrity, I'd be glad to hear it anytime. One of my subjects. So in that, I'll just touch briefly on House Bill 111, something else I worked on a lot, which was the to get rid of qualified immunity, but it went farther than that. It would greatly increase the risk of liability for just about everything to do with towns or state government, and even possibly affect board members, ZBA board members and planning board members who could have been personally sued. But that did not, that bill failed. So, but I worked with local fire and emergency personnel around here to kind of help educate people on that. And one thing that I'm kind of toying with the idea of is because I work in town government and I worked, volunteered my time over at the Tilton Town Hall, is the idea of possibly, we're running out of space in town halls for government records, and we're not allowed to digitize anything. So I'm exploring the idea of writing some legislation that would allow the digitization of some of our maybe land use records, maybe the large architectural drawings, perhaps. I'm not sure, I'm gonna have to talk to NHMA about it and see what is the most practical thing, but I don't know, how is space in Tilton Town Hall for records? Do you have plenty
Limited.
of space, or you're running out? Everybody was cramming those files in there.
Yeah.
Are the record official in what happened?
Jefferson.
Jefferson.
Oh,
So you went out.
yeah.
They get wet.
They get lost.
Yeah, they get.
I,
All these records.
right, if we can overcome the idea, when I took a government records workshop and they said, well, the problem is, you could digitize these things and put them on a CD or something, and then CDs will go out of favor, and then nobody has the equipment to look at the media, decades later. But if you can put something in place to overcome that, some kind of archival, cloud-based something. Yeah, we must be there. We must be there. 'Cause I've seen some of these architectural drawing plan sets. They're literally, I could not pick them up. There's, for something like Walmart or one of these.
Huge.
So I don't know. I haven't done that since college. I know microfiche is allowed as I think a storage.
Yeah.
You can do that, but what town is going to sit there and put microfiche?
I just wanted to add that a couple of years ago, we did start requesting any of the architectural drawings, anything submitted to planning board since, all these architects and design firms have PDF versions of these, that they submit those as well. So while you're correct, if you go down the basement, you'll find these big rolls, but in many cases, we've started compiling those and organizing them digitally. And as you know, we do have a pretty significant digitizing effort going on in town. So, but again, not the official record, but that would be wonderful if you could get that accomplished.
Great, I'll take that in any, what you have on that.
We have a planning board or zoning board.
So you're still mailing out the packets?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you have to get.
Some members don't
Oh,
like digital.
We didn't really get that.
There's,
It's a brave new world, Julia.
Well, we had it when, when I first started. So you can do that now. You don't need to mail out.
just make sure you guys are talking into your microphones, please,
Oh, sorry.
and that they're on.
We, in Plymouth, they email everything. I put it online and then we email all the applications out, but that's pretty much all I have. If you have any ideas for bills, my way. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Thanks, Julia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much. All right. Do we have? Oh, that's right, I see that. All right, so we'll move on. Do we want to allow a couple minutes for Mr. Kenny, or you guys want to have a,
Absolutely.
he came all the way here. We'll give him, is that okay with you, Pat, because you're next on the agenda?
I'm next.
Yes, the Tilton Island.
Well,
Tree
so
restoration.
come on up.
I apologize. So I should have scheduled ahead of time.
No, press it again, because now you're off.
Now I'm on.
Now you're on.
Green. I
Green
should
is
have
on.
known that. But I've always appreciated the open invitation that the town of Tilton's always given me. So I'm Joe Kenny for some of the new folks here. I'm your executive counselor. I serve 108 towns in 4 cities, a bunch of unincorporated areas, and there are actually people that live in those unincorporated areas. There's about 18 or 20 of them. And so generally what I do is I'm one of 5 as far as executive counselors, and I'm part of what we describe as like a board of directors that co-administrates executive branch along with the governor. We predominantly work with our commissioners very closely, vote on all the spending that goes through the legislature and goes to the agencies in the form of contracts. So all your heavy duty contracts have to get governor and council approval. That's over $10,000. And secondly, we do a lot of boards and commission appointments. So all the commissioners, all the key boards and commissions, in state government, we approve. And lastly, we do judicial appointments as well. We're looking for a few judges. So if anybody's got a legal background, need some judges in district court. But that's an ongoing process. We're trying to get more and more, a lot of people are aging out and we need to, backfill them. And we have a gentleman, Chris Keating from Tufton Borough, that was just confirmed to the circuit court at the last meeting. So he should be a good addition. And he's really from this neck of the woods. He grew up in Grafton County, went to Holderness and went to Dartmouth, now lives in Tufton Borough. Couple of key issues I will just talk about. One is that the executive council works on the 10-year highway improvement plan. And so I've designated in September to have a meeting here in Tilton. So the big footprint of DOT comes to Tilton. And you get to ask them any question about infrastructure, anything about funding. You can ask them about the new federal highway plan that's just been passed, and our commissioners got a national position with AASHTO, which is kind of a safety transportation group that she oversees nationally. So Victoria Sheehan is her name. Bill Cass is from Laconia, a long time, public servant in DOT. So the whole idea is for us to work with the regional planning commissions, local towns, and the executive council oversees it. And once we agree on the plan, it will ultimately end in the hands of the governor, who will push it on to the legislature, and then they will battle it out and then come up with a final approval. The other thing that's been important more recently, we've been accepting all the National American Rescue Act plan money that's been coming into the state. And when you look at the sizable amounts of money coming into the state, I think Tilton is somewhere around 350,000. I think you've been appropriated here. And so the whole idea is, as towns ask me, what do you think? I just said, put it into infrastructure. It's once in a lifetime, type of funding that you're going to get from the federal government, and just push into infrastructure. Having said that, a lot of the agencies are getting a lot of this money as well. The Department of Environmental Services will be getting $250 million just for wastewater and some of their other programs. And we've had a lot of money being distributed throughout the agencies. Even the state library system's been getting money for their library system. So if anybody has economic development projects or infrastructure projects, my office is here to help and facilitate with regards to the agency side of things and what's in the agency for potential grants. There are traditional grant sources like USDA, EDA, Northern Borders Regional Commission. There's money that's kind of, in the form of grants that's kind of buried throughout the state agencies. Community Development Block Grant Program is very popular, and that's usually for facility grants. We have this thing called the Water Drinking Fund, which is well funded, and that's for, I believe we've literally given out millions and millions and dozens of projects since the inception of that fund, which is basically out of I think it was an Exxon settlement fund that we received over $300 million. And then we have the Volkswagen fund as well, which has been really popular with the kind of electric charging stations around the district. So you're going to see more and more of those things popping up. I think this one.
Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah, I keep bumping into them. I'm going to have to draw out a map. There's one up at Rogers Campground in Lancaster. So they're everywhere and they're growing. And so that's good. And there's still money there. I think there's about $14.6 million for that particular fund. And so it's being well used. It's been a little bit slower than some of the other states, but they've been very deliberate. New Hampshire tends to be that way. So, obviously any questions you have of me or any, opportunities I can help out, the town of Tilton, I'm glad to do that. We have obviously with your local representatives, your Senator Guider and myself, the governor's office, we work together very well. So we're here to help. And I'm a little bit grayer than I am the last time I was here.
John?
As you heard, the Silver Lake
Yep.
debacle.
John,
there.
just make sure you speak into your microphone.
In the Silver Lake debacle that we've got going on. And it's kind of interesting if we actually look at the whole history of the lakes and we looked at Winnipesaukee, Opeechee, all through there, the purpose of the dams were to store water from Massachusetts. So they could actually power everything through there. And in fact, there was a law that if it was flooding your land, it was legal to break the dams down. A guy named Forster back in the 1860s went and did a bunch of that. So after that, we started developing, using the lakes and the rivers to control some water going into the Merrimack so we could economically vitalize through our cities in Tilton and Laconia and the mills and really developed that a lot. Then after that, that died out and we kind of looked at the rivers and that to kind of get rid of our effluent. And then back, 15 or maybe it's 20 years ago when we did the huge sewer project, it started cleaning up the rivers and we monitored that as the rivers got better and that. But we're not really looking at the usefulness of our rivers and our lakes and what they mean to the people who live on them and that, except for we're just focusing on Winnipesaukee and Winnisquam, which is great, but all through there. Now, great things happen. We've gone down to the end of Winnipesaukee River in Franklin. I mean, that's great. That's going to be a big money thing for the Merrimack County and for Franklin to revitalize it. But we also have to realize that between those lakes, we have a beautiful river that could be utilized and that, we can help Silver Lake, but that whole ribbon through there, we need to look at how that can also be utilized for economic growth for Tilton. I think we've talked about, beautifying it so we could have river walks and all that. And recently coming up, we've got the DOT project with Route 3 and 11. I don't know if you're aware of that, but to rebuild that guardrail through there. And we've actually expanded Belknap County for our island, which I don't know, are we gonna get more representation now or in Belknap County for that little island?
Nobody
But anyway,
actually
I'm not
knows.
even.
Redistricting is up this year. Anything's possible.
So it's important that when all these projects are going through, we're looking at our whole river as an economic growth opportunity. And one of the things is with the work that's being done on 3 and 11 to also include like the Tilton Island and the rest all the way down through the Belknap County part of this to beautify it. It's a great asset and recreational and all that. And so I'd like to make sure we keep in mind that whole river and our economic development for this whole county.
No, that's a very good, point, because DES has this ARM program, which is kind of a mitigation grant program for the various watersheds around the state. And I went to a dedication New Hampshire Day up in Bethel, Maine. They preserve hundreds of acres in Shelburne, the riverlands. So they're protecting the water and the ecology around that water. We just had another ARM grant that went kind of in the Northfield area. I know the Forest Society was involved in preserving some of the easements along the river bank. That is a very popular program that is being used throughout the state. But, New Hampshire's known for clean water, fresh air, our mountains, just our natural resources that we have. And water is very key. We do get a lot of grants to the Winnipesaukee Water Basin and some of their, efforts to improve the infrastructure, which is, very important. Anything to do with water today is very sacred, and we have to protect it and make sure it's there for the future. So anything, I can do through my office to support an effort, I'm glad to do that. A lot of your traditional groups, your Forest Society, conservation groups, your land trust groups have been taking a big lead on these efforts to try to preserve water that was perceived back in my early days as you take the worst land in the town and you put a dump. And that's what happened in my community. And then the 1980 comes around and says, oh, we've got batteries and toxic wakes, and there's aquifers under the dump. Oh, I didn't know that. Next thing you know, you have the land closure grants, and then they're capping off the landfills, and they're putting monitoring wells in there for 20, 30, 50 years. So, it's very important. Obviously, the huge issue going up in Dalton with the, first time in over 20 years, we put in a landfill or potential landfill request. Has created a lot of issues because of Forest Lake Park, how close it is. And so anytime we're looking and dealing with water, the Wetlands Bureau right now, we have a lot of complaints. They're over regulatory, but they are, when it comes towards water, they're very concerned about it, about violations, about, our Shoreline Protection Act to make sure that's protected, the waterways. And I hear it loud and clear. So, I didn't think much about it as a kid growing up in New Hampshire. I just thought everyone picked up the trash and, was a good steward. But when it comes to water and development and preserving what we have, it's utmost. It's a very important issue. So I could talk a lot more, but I appreciate the limited time you've given me. So, but feel free to reach out to my office. I'm supposedly after 6 months going to get business cards. I've been after my secretary for the last 2 months. So when I do get them, I'll make sure everyone gets a business card so you can reach out to me.
You have the same phone number you used to have?
Yes, still have the same
I'm all
number.
set.
Yeah, I still have the same face, just the hair is a little grayer.
Hello, Vistaprint.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time, and again, reach out to my office.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you. All right. Surprise visitor. Let's see, next is our Tilton Island Tree Restoration Preservation Replacement Plan. That's you. It says your name next to it.
I have no idea why preservation replacement plan is on there, but I sent you all pictures of what I saw at the island. There are two branches. One is completely removed and just hung up on another branch, ready for the wind to take it, and it's going to hurt somebody. The other one is broken but still attached. It's not completely severed, but it's very large, and it's down by the point, by the monument. And while we were watching the concert I happened to look back and there were kids trying to swing on it, which if that breaks, it's going to be a danger to us and a liability. So I then decided as the concert was wrapping up to check out the other trees, and there's one other tree as you're looking at the gazebo to the right. It's fairly large, that has one dead branch on it that's not really a danger to anyone, but could be in the future. But the two branches that are there in the back, they need to be taken a look at fairly soon. I know Jeannie was going to talk to Kevin to take a look at them. I don't know if he got over there or not.
Well, when I got your pictures, it was hard for me to decipher where they were without being on the island, but it kind of started a chain of thought to my head that this might be an opportunity for us to take a look and maybe find an arborist to look at the health of the trees on the island, to look and see if we, should be coming up with some type of plan or maintenance plan or just pruning because of the tree. Just my own thinking is maybe this is an opportunity because we're seeing in a neighboring town where there's some issues with trees, but the island park is really a focal point for the town, of recreation, concerts, weddings, and I would hate for something like you just said with kids swinging from a branch that appears to be broken, but maybe just take a look at the health of the trees in the island and make sure that we're okay. And if we have to come up with a plan to start pruning the trees, making sure if we have to plant trees so that if we do cut, maybe it's a 20-foot high tree versus a sapling or something like that. And I don't know if this just seemed like to me a window of opportunity for us to take a look at the island as a whole and the health of the trees and make sure that we are doing that and hiring someone that knows trees.
We did that not too long ago. It was probably like 6 years, maybe 6 years
Wow,
ago.
those things change.
Yeah. But the trees that these branches are, they look pretty healthy. So I agree with you. Probably we should, but we should take care of these branches before we get an arborist out there. I mean,
Scott had his hand up.
I think Pat's right in addressing the immediate need in terms of safety. And I also think you're thinking, I would like to expand the fact that, we have another very active public park with riverfront too. So if we're going to have an arborist take a look at the island, then maybe we should think about the other parks where we know that there's more foot traffic, just to check, especially with safety issues as well.
John?
With some information, Bob Hardy in contact, because we were talking about the routes. AJ, last name, is supposed to get in contact with us over the next couple of weeks to just take a look at the island trees and the health and what should be done to maintain them, to keep them healthy. And that's completely free, paid for by the state. He's the urban forester for the state. And along with UNH, and they're doing field walks through different towns now and make a comprehensive plan. Pat spoke of a few years back, about 6 years ago, I think that's right. We did some major pruning. I think it was a couple $1,000.
right?
No, I think it was somebody else that came through, and Magoon also, and that
Yep.
they did bids, and they suggested budgeting around $1,000 a year just for pruning of our trees to go through once in. That would be cheaper than to do it yearly, as opposed to wait till it gets real bad and then do it, and just keep up our trees. With that, there were a few of us that went and took a course with UNH, sponsored by UNH, and a T-Square program. Johnny Bilodeau, Fred, and I went out. We took some courses put on by UNH, and field training, hands-on stuff with maintaining trees, municipal trees and all that. So perhaps some of those folks aren't with the Public Works Department, that might be a good area to be back and take it. Jack Tacomio also took that class. So I guess the 3-point thing, free from the state. We have the urban forester and UNH wishes to come out. I did check back with them. Yes, I hadn't heard, and I'll get everybody involved and make sure everybody's on the list with that. And then the next thing is, like you said, our public work can do right away, just to anything that you see around town.
And look, our public works director is here. So we're talking about trees in the Island Park. Yeah, there's some branches that appear. If you see Pat, there's some branches that she took pictures of that seem to be more critical than others. All right. Thanks, Pat. And thanks for not. Good. And next, the Conservation Commission, sorry, my bad. If you guys want to come up to this table, we want to make sure that we need microphones so that everyone can be heard. Do we have the portable microphone too, maybe?
Hello, Mrs. Mitchell.
Hello,
Oh, I saw the phone.
How are you tonight?
There, you can see the little silver.
What it is. Yeah, me too.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Kathy, you coming up?
No.
He's going to make you talk, Kathy, whether you want to or not.
Great that Joe's here.
Oh, yeah, look at that. It's. All right. So we just want to make sure that, we'll wait for Joe to come back. I guess we'll wait a couple of minutes. Just want to make sure you talk in the microphone for the minutes so they can be typed out. We'll wait for Joe.
Yeah, I don't want Joe to miss any of this.
Is there another copy of all this stuff available here? Or do we have the exact amount?
You want
Of
another
the
one?
packet?
Kathy, do you have another packet?
Price?
Just to let you know, Chuck, that I know in your email to me, you said you need about 20 minutes, but we've allotted about 45 just to be safe. Gives us a cushion somewhere built in. Joe's getting dinner. Is everyone from your board here? I don't remember everyone who's on your board. Is everyone here? I see Helen. Everyone here or?
I was supposed to come, but
Okay. Okay. All right. We welcome the Tilton Conservation Commission, and Chuck Mitchell is going to speak. So Chuck, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that I'm here tonight, not speaking for myself, my wife, or anyone else on the Conservation Commission as a single person or otherwise. I'm here to represent the entire commission.
Understood.
On the second page, I hope everyone can just take a quick look at that. I think there might be some misunderstandings, but I'm not 100% sure of what the role of the Conservation Commission is. Just as an FYI, the Conservation Commission was reestablished in the town of Tilton back in 1983. At that time, yours truly and Bob Hardy were two of the original people appointed by the Select Board to the Conservation Commission. So some of us have been around for at least 38 years, which is a long time. In addition to that, I just want to let you know that because Bob Hardy is a forester, we have other people who are here. We have a horticulturist on there, a farmer, science teachers, fisherman, educator, biologist, researcher, hiker, ornithologist, a botanist, a canoeist, hunter, photographer, writer, and businessmen, and developers, all part of the Conservation Commission. We also are an organization, if you would ever want to look back, has had very little, if no turnover to speak of in the last 25 or 30 years. We have a very dedicated group of people, all who care very much about what our role is. And in discussing our role at the top of page 2, you will notice that we are the only local body specifically charged with protecting the natural resources. And with this, you know, if you look at the bottom of the page, you'll find there's a list of some of the natural resources are right under that, but I don't need to really go through those. But the natural resources of the town do include quite a few things, and it's not just wetlands. And then under the Conservation Commission must conduct research into local land and water areas to seek and coordinate activity of unofficial bodies organized for similar purposes. And by the way, we do have a strong connection with the Winnisquam Watershed Network, the WRTA, the Historical Society, and other groups that we're in contact with on a constant basis. We keep an index of all open spaces, natural and aesthetic and ecological areas. We keep accurate records of all of our meetings and file our annual report for the town meeting. We're also responsible for managing and improving the Lakes Capital Reserve Fund, which is oftentimes thought of as the milfoil fund, in which case we have given, through the town, been able to benefit both the Silver Lake Association and the Winnisquam area for the control of milfoil. We also can recommend for the protection, development, and better utilization of all areas. We are able to receive monies and gifts of property, both real and personal, subject to the approval, of course, of the town. Right now, 3 of the specific areas that we had been involved with acquiring, as you know, Buffalo Park, which is over 55 acres of land, and that came through a mitigation of the Lowe's development. The Salmon Run project, in which we spent, as you know, as for some of you as selectmen, spent a lot of money in trying to make sure that we protected our investment in that. When we made the original investment, we purchased it from a gentleman we found out later who didn't own it. The town had to spend a lot of money to try to recover some money, which we never did get back. But we were able to secure that property. And we also had purchased some land up on Highland Avenue, which abuts Buffalo Park. Yes.
Are you saying that we didn't get that money back?
No.
No, because
The ones
we
we
ended up,
mediated?
the town ended up spending a substantial sum of money, I'm going to say approaching $50,000 or more in litigation expenses. The gentleman who took our money, I believe, is still incarcerated.
Right.
And I don't think there is any way we can ever recover those funds. And then the
Not
town,
from that guy, but wasn't there another guy that was on the hook?
no,
There was a lawyer.
no, there was a lawyer who handled the case, and there was a litigation of recovering something from him. And I believe there was maybe some small amount, but it was nothing to speak of.
Not the money we spent.
No. And then when we reacquired the property, we did it through the state for a very reasonable sum of money. And anyway, so as the list goes on here, you can see there really are a lot of responsibilities, including some other things. Under managing the town forest, we did manage to get the Buffalo Park declared as a town forest, and there are some benefits to having that done. We also investigate and also comment on any applications for dredge and fill permits with New Hampshire DES. And the other thing is that anytime there's any kind of proposed excavation in town, the Conservation Commission is supposed to get a copy of that. And you can see down under the wetlands ordinance, prior to making a decision, the planning board shall afford the Conservation Commission an opportunity to provide a comment and shall consider any such comments provided. And under the Wetlands Conservation District, that includes surface waters, wetlands, wetland buffers, and around wetland surfaces. So in the past, when the Conservation Commission has tried to put in its 2 cents worth on various projects and developments in town, whether it's a single individual applying to get some work done or any kind of an application which basically comes into town hall, it's probably not a bad idea for the Conservation Commission to get a copy of any of those applications. And because we don't have to just deal specifically with wetlands, it's any natural resources within the town. When the Conservation Commission gets bypassed on those, and then they go ahead and work and pass, whether it's zoning board exceptions or whether or not it's the planning board granting approval on projects without even contacting the Conservation Commission, that gets kind of a little bit strange, and they're not really following what the law says here. On the next page, I think everybody here has already heard about the proposed project of maintaining and sustaining that corner between Salmon Run and Cumberland Farms and the Trestle. I would just like to draw your attention to that underlined part in paragraph 2, where it basically states in there that as a protective measure, the department would like to request that the town's preferred priority mitigation efforts and so forth. And one of the things that we had sent a letter to the select board, which is, by the way, the next sheet of paper. We did send in to you a copy of our comments about that. And one of the things that the Conservation Commission is trying to do is to come up with a list of priorities for any kind of mitigations. And it's important, we feel, as a Conservation Commission, that we include all parts of the town in coming up with that list of priorities. Usually you will find that the state will check with the Conservation Commission when it comes to seeking a mitigation, but we don't want to do that on just our own and then have other people say, well, you should have done this or you should have done that. So the successive pages in here, you will see on the following page is a list of priorities that the Conservation Commission came up with, starting in the middle, just below the center of the page. And it says, at the TCC meeting is the list, at our June meeting, number 1 was to stabilize the island, including the big stones and so forth around it. Now, that was our list. And I didn't come here tonight wanting to get into a work session where I could ask each of the select board members what their priorities were, or we could be sitting here for a long time. However, it would be our intention as a Conservation Commission, which is, by the way, one of the reasons that earlier you had heard some comments about us wanting to get together with the ZBA and the planning board. We want to try to work cooperatively with every agency in this town. We don't want to be out there hung out to dry or not included, but we want to be part of the discussion. And so what we're going to do is we are sending copies of this to the ZBA, the planning board, and anyone else. And what we would propose to do in the future is to try to get together a work session after we have collected some of this information and have a public hearing where we could discuss any possible priorities for mitigation. Now, the other thing about mitigation, and because of the amount of riverbank being disturbed, the state is going to be responsible for something. And it's either going to be a mitigation in which the town will make a recommendation, or the Conservation Commission might, or the ARM fund. And I believe you heard something already about the ARM fund. The ARM fund can in fact give some wonderful grants, but however, the other flip side of that is these are also in competition. If the state were to turn around and put money into the ARM fund, that does not guarantee that a penny of it will ever come back to the town of Tilton. And when you got other towns and communities throughout the state competing for monies in the ARM fund, we might in the long run be much better off to have a specific plan for mitigation as compared to having the state putting money into the ARM fund, which we might never ever see at all. So I just wanted to make that point. Let's see, what else is on my list here?
Chuck, when you talk about mitigation, you're talking about mitigation also with the state and not necessarily just with the town.
I think what would be nice to have is a list of priority mitigations for whatever projects might come along. In this particular case, since we know the state will be responsible for, at this point, if they're going to be disturbing the amount of embankment that they're talking about, will be required to provide either mitigation or money into the ARM fund. And at this point, we would like to have something ready and prepared, because although this project was due to start, believe it or not, this October, I think it's in this letter, they have now decided to put this off a year. Now, if they decide to do something during the low drawdown of the Winnipesaukee River, it's very possible that in the past they've even done this, is to put equipment in the river. Or they would put some kind of a long, crane type thing, in which case they might be able to very well move some of those stones around the island even from the roadway, because we know they're not going to get any equipment out over that bridge.
Right.
So there's a lot of possibilities, but as far as just a list of priorities for mitigation, that would be a nice thing to have as a community, and not just the priorities of the Conservation Commission. The last item here, communication, and I just want to mention that all we want or hope for is that when any project comes into town, that hopefully the Conservation Commission will be just included in the communication. Most everything is done by electronically these days. And when an application comes into the land use office and has to go either before or both the ZBA and the planning board, it would be really nice to get a copy of that application just forwarded to the Conservation Commission. That doesn't mean that we want to step in and try to do anything, but it would be nice to get a copy, because sometimes when we're talking about something other than wetlands, we're also referring to the natural resources in the town, and that's where we should also be consulted, not just on wetlands. And so that is one of the primary things. And within our own wetlands ordinance, and I don't know what the page is, but it's 14.9.4. Prior to making a decision, the planning board shall afford the Conservation Commission an opportunity to provide comment, and shall consider any such comments provided. Now, that's a pretty definite statement. I will tell you that in some recent history, and I won't go back how far, that has not happened. Not happened at all. And then under 14.9.3, the planning board, in enacting an application on a conditional use permit in the Wetlands Conservation Overlay District, may attach conditions to the approval, including but not limited to the requirements for more extensive buffers, additional plantings in the areas, and revegetated performance guarantees, and a reduction in the proposed impervious surfaces. That's also in there. And so the Conservation Commission right now, all we're asking for is open and forthright communication, nothing else. We're not here to argue. We're not here to complain about any personnel. We just want everything to be open. Any questions?
Pat?
Reasonable request.
That's all we have to say. We didn't come here to argue or anything.
I learned a lot.
And I want to thank you very much for inviting us to attend. And is
Thank
there
you
anyone
for
else
coming.
from behind me? Want to contribute anything?
Oh, wait, Helen, do you have your hand up? I can't see through
Yeah,
Chuck, sorry.
I'm sorry. It's been a long day. I just wanted to follow up on some, Helen Hanks for the record, Conservation Commission. Wanted to follow up on some comments that Chuck shared with regard to mitigation plan for the town. And certainly we've identified in the verbal testimony some opportunities of collaboration, planning board, zoning board. If there are recommendations from the selectmen, you all come from different areas and have certainly different committees and contacts that we should reach out to, or you want to refer to us, we'd be very open to that feedback, including our own Tilton Historical Society. We've worked with them too. More information will create a more comprehensive opportunity for us to look at, and then obviously we'd share that proposal with the selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
This is just a random question because I haven't investigated that project well. But is the border between the two towns the geographic center of the river? And if they move the land, how many ever feet? Let's just say 20 feet in. Does that move the border between the towns? And is the other town going to have to be involved in any mitigation? I don't know. I just don't.
I will add that there was some discussion at the Conservation Commission that if in fact they added a significant amount of fill on the side that was nearest Cumberland Farm.
We got to have a microphone. I'm sorry. Just for the record, sorry.
If a substantial amount of fill were to be added on the Tilton side, it could very well change the channel in the river. If it changes the channel in the river so that the flow is different, it could impact the other side of the river. We know that somewhere in that area that there's that little beach area that is part of the town of Northfield. There's a good chance that that could be impacted depending upon how far up the fill is added. If it does impact that, then in fact, the town of Northfield should be included in any discussions of this.
Yeah, I was just more curious. So like, sometimes you hear, the border is the high, if it was an ocean high tide point where this is the middle of a river. So I don't know if it fluctuates.
I think it's been a comment that the Conservation Commission at our last meeting, I think it's even in the minutes, that we did say the town of Northfield should be included. And I believe the secretary has in fact been in touch with people in the town of Northfield that when we put together some information and have the gentleman or the engineer from the state come up, that they should be included.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for answering my question. Anyone else have any questions? John, Scott? No? All right.
Thank you. No, Mr. Rushlow has.
Mr. Russell, yeah.
Excuse me, my name is Paul Rushlow. I'm also a member of the Conservation Commission. I'd just like to offer my services to the town as an arborist.
Oh.
I've been an arborist when I was young. We won't go back how many years, but anyway, going back into the dark ages, I have a degree from UMass in arboriculture. And then I think Chuck described me, I've been described as a lot of things, but as a horticulturalist, I think I was a horticulturalist on that list, among other things. But I also have a degree from Kansas State University, a degree in horticulture. And then I worked briefly for the state of New Hampshire, long enough to get the insurance, 10 years to be specific. And in that capacity, I was an arborist and also a landscape specialist for DOT. So I have both some experience with working for the state government and trees in general, right?
There you go.
There you go.
We go.
So
All right.
I would say the
Maybe
town,
send them over to the island.
hopefully I could save the town some money on the arboricultural end of it. And I'd gladly offer my 50+ years of experience to work with town officials or the state officials. And I know many of the state people that are involved in horticulture or arboriculture. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rushlow. Thank you.
Ask Kevin to get in touch with him.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Helen.
guys. Thank you very much. All right. Have a piece of chocolate, Joe.
Sure did.
Thank you.
I need a strip.
All right. Wait a minute.
Or easy.
All right.
I brought dessert. Eat dessert first. Life is uncertain, Pat. That's right.
All right. We all set? Yeah, we're moving ahead of schedule.
Well, don't stop now.
No, I'm not. All right. Next are the selectmen's reports. First up, John Scanlon.
So there's not a lot to be shared this week. It's been pretty quiet.
Good, I'll take your time up.
Yeah, Pat can use up my time. Everything's all set. The lawn across from around the entering Tilton sign looks nice out there. And maybe they can get the lights lit up on a better timer there. But that's about it.
They filled in your hole over on the island.
I'll be Kevin.
Mhm.
Thank you. Fill in the hole in the island. Rodents and
And
varmint
the
colony.
War Memorial, the U's are gone.
Fine.
You can- Oh, I said, well, that whole section of
Oh,
road's
okay.
been, looks nice out there now.
I saw someone out there on their lawnmower that looked awfully much like someone I know. All right. Yeah, so you're all done, John?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next up, Pat.
I'm going to
Constantine.
use some of his time up too.
All right.
All right.
There you go right
I have a
ahead.
few things.
I'm going to yield it to somebody else, so maybe.
Well, I already went through the trees on the island. Selling the old stove and the money's going to the senior center fund. So let's talk about selling the old stove at the senior center. I did contact Joe, who knows a guy. And we're trying to figure out what its worth was. And then I called Garland to find out, because it's a Garland stove. And they gave me exactly $300 or $400. We do have a buyer. I want to offer it to that person for $350 because it's $300 or $400. But I would also like to make a motion that the monies go back into the Tilton Senior Center Fund.
Second that.
Motion in a second. I have a question.
Go ahead.
In the sale of what would technically be surplus property, does the town have a policy on how that should be handled? Should it be handled through a sealed bid? I'm just asking. I'm just asking. I'm not.
Not that I know of.
No, we haven't done that.
Well, just like if you go out and buy something, you're supposed to get 3 bids if it's over a certain amount. Likewise, if you're going to sell a town asset, are you supposed to go through a sealed bid process where
If you
it's
consider
not
this
to
an
someone?
asset.
Well, it belongs to the Tilton Senior Center, which belongs to the town of Tilton,
Town property, yeah.
town property. So are we going through the right
It's either
procedure?
going to go to the dump or buy some.
Well, again, I'm just asking if there's a procedure, because I want to make sure that we're not doing that. Tim, you had a
There's no
question.
procedure.
To do a sealed bid? Okay.
Larger
Assets
items.
were worth
Worth a little bit more
significantly
money.
more.
Right.
We've done that.
Joe?
I've seen that oven, I've used that oven, and ovens are my area of expertise. It's $400 is the top end that you're gonna get for that oven, no matter whether you bid it out or not. I talked it around to all the restaurant people and equipment people that I know, and none of them were even willing to take it. So you can take that under advisement or not, but
No, I just want to make sure that we're following,
Mhm.
we're not violating anything and, just following procedure. That's all I'm interested in. I have no problem with the money going back to the senior center. I just want to make sure that we're following procedure, and that's all. Policies and procedures. I just want to make sure we're following it. That's all.
This will not be removed until the new one comes in, which will be September. Hopefully Kevin will help with that. Yeah. I call a question.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, there was an incident in downtown on last Saturday night where somebody got ticketed. And that person brought it to a couple of selectmen's attention. But the officer was completely well within the right of ticketing that person. There was a sign there that said 2-hour parking. And, but it led to a very productive conversation, whereas the selectmen perhaps should start looking at our parking ordinance, where we're trying to keep people downtown and locally downtown. Our restaurants right now, if you on a Saturday night or a Friday night even, if you want to go to Casamigos, you're a half hour to 45-minute wait and the line's out the door. Onions is the same way, the line's out the door. So if you have a 2-hour parking ban on there, you're wasting at least half of that on waiting to get in to have your dinner. The same way with, T-Hop or any of the other restaurants. I'm not going to single out the restaurants. I'm just saying downtown. And we want people to come downtown. We want local businesses to have those customers. That's our intent of original intent of the parking was so that people would not park downtown. Businesses would not park downtown. They would park in the municipal so that customers could come downtown and serve the local businesses. So we don't have to do it tonight, but perhaps give some thought to maybe Friday through Sunday or something to increase that ban to, instead of 2-hour, to like a 4-hour band, particularly like on a Sunday night. You have your concerts in the summer. People park along that edge there because it's railroad to railroad. So if you go railroad to railroad, it goes along Cumbies in Mishkon's, Dr. Mishkon's office, in through there, along that parking area, up through there, where it very clearly says 2-hour parking. Just a thought. And it's at least a 3-hour concert, right?
Well, 2 hours of music plus
Right.
either end.
Right, either end, getting in and getting out.
John?
One of the interesting things with the 2-hour ban, I think, and that's till 8 o'clock at night, that 2 hours is on our ordinance. It says like from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. that's enforced. So to 7, then you could park at 5 o'clock all night. Or 5:01. Because you have 2 hours to park, and then after that, it's free parking. So if you park by Casamigos at 6 o'clock, you have all night to park there, not just 2 hours. If you're at 6:01. Because you have 2 hours, and then after 8, you don't have to park, so.
Right.
And the other thing, I took a good look, and although we have an ordinance that states the parking and the hours of the parking, the signs don't really show it. So you could potentially park there not knowing that you're not allowed to. Like you said, in front of Dr. Mishkon's, I didn't see a sign until you get all the way up to Onions. In order to
Right.
have the sign, you have to have it before you park so you can read the sign. Not, no, further down the road, there's a sign.
But there aren't any parking in front of Dr. Mishkon's, so you
Yes,
get
well, I'm talking about between there and Onions. And the next,
259, right?
the next sign is all the way up by Town Hall, by
No,
Onions. Well,
it's right in
if
front of
everybody takes a look.
249. It's in front of 249 Main Street where that car was ticketed. It's
In-
on the telephone
in
pole.
front of it, when if you're parking here. But I think, like you said, we have to look at it.
No, I went down and looked at it, and the car was there right in front of his windshield. You could see 2-hour parking. And it was 251 Main Street was the sign where the pole is. And then 249, there was another parking space in front of them. There's 2 parking spaces there.
And the other thing is to get, I think, and Jeannie was looking into this too on the, that sign, what happened to our original municipal parking sign. I think was falling down or needed painted and whatever, but so that it says, because it used to have a big sign that said free parking, municipal parking, with the arrow pointing towards behind the church.
We used to, I think it was at the corner of Town Hall there on that telephone pole.
Right.
Is that what you're talking about?
The picture I
Right.
sent you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the picture? Is
That was down directly opposite Casa Amigo and see pulling.
No,
facing
there was
fire
one at the
station.
corner of Town Hall, and then I don't know if there's another one,
The
either
one I
Tryon
sent
or
you, the
Rescue
big one,
Lane.
was
Yeah.
right there, so. But this is good that, we're getting the people.
Right,
See,
I
let's
mean,
Kind of help herd them into the right spaces.
Is it make more sense and to have I mean, we're not the business owners, maybe have a hearing, a public hearing, or with the business owners, invite them to a selection meeting to discuss it and get their input. I don't know if that's something that we can do. I don't hear it. I can hear you, but I don't hear you through the speakers. No. Don?
when I was up in Plymouth. Up in Plymouth. Okay, for instance, going into the hairdresser. So if you had 2 hours on the meter. If I went over the 2 hours and I went out and I got a ticket, all I had to do was go back into the hairdresser and they would give that to the officer and it would get waived because I was there on business. I wasn't there just hanging out. So there are a lot of different ways to handle parking issues on Main Street. And I think it's right to look at this, and we have been, but I think we want to be cautious because if you make one change, it could cause more problems. So like John said, the idea of parking signs is really important. We need to get those signs up. Last year, again, we were looking at getting quotes to put the municipal signs back up to direct people to parking, and COVID hit and we didn't go anywhere. So there's still a lot of work to do. I think the Plan New Hampshire charrette's going to help with that, to talk about parking. So September 24th and 25th.
So is that should we have a hearing with the businesses? I mean,
Well, that's what the first step was going to be, that the lieutenant and I were going to have a meeting with the businesses on Main Street to talk to them first, to see what they had, what their thoughts were. Certainly, if you want to have a public meeting with the selectmen and not do that meeting that we were talking about, that's fine with me, whatever you want.
the feeling of the board.
What's your time frame? I mean, what's your time like, Jeannie? I mean, is it feasible for you and Abe to get that done? I mean, you folks are really busy right now.
We are. I mean, but the reality is, next week we're into August. So I don't think this problem is going to get fixed in this summer season. And
But I mean, I think it's something, by the concert series is going to end by the time we can do anything. But at least for next year, if we start
Right.
taking action now.
But there's no limit on Sunday nights. So
No, I know,
concert's
but
really not an issue,
but maybe next year you discover that, you're going to have the concerts on Friday. I don't know.
Right, exactly.
But let's start now. Let's be a little proactive in it and do it. John?
If we look at the history of the parking, I think Joe remembers a lot of this. Pat remembers this. We've changed this or tweaked it every 2 years.
3 years, yeah.
And there's always a couple issues that arise over it. But I can say that, like Jeannie was saying, I haven't heard anybody complain about the numbers in almost 2 years. And the timing and the hours. We adopted new hours for Brian Lawrence to help, keep a quick in and out thing there. So all in all, it's been pretty good. It's worked out good. It's been hard to fine tune this.
I say if Jeannie has time, but I doubt she does, but anyway, if she's offering to go ahead with the meeting with the businesses and get a feel from what the businesses, that would be the route that we would want to go first, rather than a public hearing with the selectmen. The less that we get involved with it, where Abe has taken over. And I mean, that Sandy and I wrote the parking ordinance years and years and years ago, but Abe has done a really good job of updating it. And you don't want to really step into it like that and have a hearing. If they want to do that, I would say go that route, but I'm hesitant because I know how busy they are.
But I haven't heard any complaints either.
About them being busy?
No,
Come on.
no, just about parking in general. I do remember a few years ago, there was complaints about the business owners parking on Main Street and things like that.
Yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be the issue right now. And it could be a sign. I mean, maybe we just let it ride and see what happens and see if it starts becoming an issue, and then we address it there. But
I think getting so that people know there's additional municipal parking.
yeah,
Right.
get the
once
signs
that's
back up.
done, I think that will.
It's
a lot
not
of it.
just for one person that's issued it. I've heard a couple of them from the T-Hop area, but it's, you're absolutely right. I would let them just go ahead and figure it out and see what the business owners say.
All right.
All right, next. Scott and I took Cindy's list out to knock on doors for taxes. We have one left. We did find something very interesting on the first one. They had moved away. The son is there. And Cindy went back out after us after she found out the information. And lo and behold, the next day after she did her thing, they paid taxes. So that's off the list. And Scott and I, after vacation, if I see him before then, that'd be fine. But Scott's going to take the realm once I'm finished here. So it was nice to go out. So there's only one left on that list.
How many were on it to begin with?
Originally, there was quite a few, but Cindy whittled it down. And but there's 3 properties left on it by one owner. So my last but not least is the fireworks ordinance. Do we have a timeline when that's going to be finished? Can we kind of put a timeline on it? Horrible in our neighborhood at midnight listening to fireworks. Horrible. And it's not supposed to be.
The other thing is, does the noise ordinance?
Because there's a noise
cover that anyway?
ordinance.
So after 10 or 11 o'clock,
Mm-hmm.
I'm out cold.
that kicks in.
I'm not because my dogs are sick. But can we try to put a time frame on it so that we can get it? This has been going on for a few years now. And we have not solidified an entire fireworks ordinance, and it's been going on at least 3 years now. We need to wrap it up. Tie it up in a nice neat bow so they can enforce it. Do you agree? Consensus, everybody?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to wait another 6 months. I waited with Jesse for almost 4 months and then he left. So we need to, I don't want to wait 4 months for this to be worked on.
My concern is why the noise ordinance isn't being applied to it.
I have a lot of concerns of why it's not being enforced, but it's the way it is.
Hey, they're taking care of parking downtown.
The point there.
What bad luck that was for them, huh?
It was an out-of-stater.
Revenue.
All right.
that it, Pat?
Yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. Scott Runkles.
One thing that's going to be a conglomerate of things. So in my continuing discussions at times with Jeannie and other members of the board in terms of looking at what actually has come up this evening a couple of times in terms of policy and procedure. Jeannie shared with me a terrific report from September 2019, the goal setting report that took place with Primex and the board. And so it was, for me, it was really good reading to get into and take a look at what the board at that time was doing. And I know that there are members here who were involved in that. It's great work. Talks about some of the attributes we'd like to have by 2024, which should probably be adjusted to 2025 because 2020 doesn't count. But I think overall, one thing I would like us to do is I would like Jeannie to sort of share it back with us so that we can all take a look at it. You know, one thing that we can take off is the new police station. So with that one can be crossed off. But I think it would be good for us. I think it would also be good for the committees in town to be able to see this report and then start thinking what areas and where do we have the opportunities now to start moving forward and start pushing forward on some of these points and some of this good work that you did. I would like to encourage us as I get to, hold on, give me 1 second here. When strategic objectives for goals, which is on this, one of them, goal number 1 was in terms of administrative functions. The second bullet point was review and create procedures. It's become evident as I've looked at it, and I know you guys are probably getting tired of hearing about it, but it's not going to stop. In terms of policy and procedure with the town, we've already identified the fact that it's kind of all over the place. It's kind of like word of mouth, and that to me, we need to solidify these a little bit. And I was having a talk with Pat about it the other day. We need to solidify some of the things. I'll give two examples. When we went through the two major interviews that we've done this year, the process for both was close, but it wasn't exactly the same in how we did it. So I would argue that what we would want to do is get a procedure down for interviews like that is consistent across the board. So whether it's chief of police, whether it's prosecutor, et cetera, so that there's consistency there, so that all groups involved know exactly what the process is going to be and how it's going to look and what the steps are. So I think in looking at that, it's going to solidify things. It's going to solidify things for employees of the town. It's going to solidify things for the board. It's going to solidify things for people who are on different commissions, et cetera, in terms of looking at it. And I know there's hesitancy because people think that you would be locked in on these things, but everyone needs to understand it's organic. It can change and adapt as we need to change and adapt it. And as we look at the review process that we've been doing the last couple of weeks too, we've identified the fact is a 3-point scale, is it antiquated? Because it doesn't allow the flexibility to sort of grade out things. And in that procedure, I know it's non-public, so throw something at me if I can't go, but in that procedure, exactly how does that play out? Should it be a recommendation from the person who's overseeing those folks to us? And then we sort of then mull over it and talk about it. So that's what I really think we should start to look at to be able to help the folks, to be able to help our employees, to be able to help the different departments, the commissions, and us as a board be able to see these things more clearly so that we're not asking questions and saying, oh, it was like this in the past. So I guess as I finish I think it's time. I think it's time to start to just take a look at those things and as we take a look at them, review them, I don't know if we want to have Jeannie start to think about it, work with the folks in the different departments. I know Jeannie's got 26-hour days that she has because she's been allotted that. But it's just in my judgment, it's time now. It's time to get those down so that we've got some consistency going forward so that we don't have all these questions and that we can take the wealth of knowledge that's here about what the procedures have been. But now let's get them down so that it makes it very clear and there aren't as many questions going forward in these different areas.
Agree with you more.
And that's my work.
All right.
Thank you.
Are you willing to do that?
On your break.
Your lunch break.
I'll do some work on the beach next week with it. So
Do that. You need people to visit you, let us know.
come on over. The house is huge. We've got, it's great. It's 50 yards from the beach. Come on down.
Now, wait a minute. If we can't find Jeannie next week, we'll know.
She's working on procedures.
Yeah.
So we'll be working on procedures at the beach. So we'll be good. All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Joe Jessman.
I was at that meeting of the DES about the level of Silver Lake. It was very informative, and I've lived there a long time, and I learned things that I didn't know, certainly. The only thing they can really do is give fair warning when they're going to lower it or raise it, because they have to do what they have to do. Winnipesaukee 9 inches over max right now. So, well, I don't know about today, but as of last night, it was way high. So we'll see how that progresses. The concerts on the island, we've had 2 out of the scheduled 4. A good time was had at both, and I'm very happy to announce that after the cost of food, we've donated $550, just over $550 toward the concerts. So yay, that I'm really happy about that. So please come down this Sunday. Heard the weather's going to be good. I'm going to have Italian sausages. Emily's going to come and work the Italian sausage. So come on down. And lastly, I won't be here next Thursday.
Well, let's rethink next Thursday.
Well, something came up and an opportunity to do something romantic with my wife.
Whoa,
And quite frankly,
too much
I don't get that
information.
many
Too
chances.
much information, please.
Well, I mean, going away.
Oh,
for,
okay.
You know what I mean? Long week.
He's not coming to
Call
the
in
beach with
on
me.
Zoom
That's,
while you're doing something
that's just-
romantic.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure I would do that.
I think that if
Probably
we
not.
only have the evaluations next week, then we should put it off, in my opinion.
Well, as a guy who won't be here, I don't feel it's right for me to vote.
I think evaluations are important for all of us to be here. So I think that that's really important for the input.
I'd just like to clarify, Joe will not be at the beach with me. Just wanna
Have
make sure that
no
that's-
current
I just want to
plan.
make sure that that is
No current
understood.
plan.
Bring the beer.
And we will not be
Like
talking about
Kyoko.
policy and
You'd
procedure.
like Kyoko.
So Jeannie, does our agenda next week, is it, could we make my dream come true and have an off
On the
week?
Boston Harbor River Cruise.
The two of you.
That we have 2 selectmen that potentially would not be here next week, so.
5 if it comes that way.
Come on over.
I'm gonna drive Joe and his wife down to Boston.
So next August 5th, you
August
were just,
already.
August 5th, you were just going to accept the donation, which could wait.
Yep.
And Jane Alden wanted to talk to you about a memorial that I'm sure can wait. And we had a non-public to finish up 3 performance appraisals. And that can wait.
Okay, then I guess we'll
Yeah, because that's retro anyway.
wait.
Okay, well,
All right.
We have to
thank
make
you
a
very
motion.
much, and that's
Well,
the end of my time.
Do we have to make, we don't have to make a motion to move the meeting, not have a meeting, do we? No, I don't think, no.
Oh, no.
Everyone's okay with not having a meeting next week?
Consensus, yes.
Okay.
Yep, based
All
on
right.
that, we really need to be, have
And
everybody here.
non-public.
Oh, well, you know, I proposed it a while ago. and I-
Well, That's because we were all gonna be here.
Come on over to
No, I
the beach.
know, I might go to the beach now.
Come on over.
I might call out sick at work, I don't know. All right, oh, that's me. Are you all set, Joe?
I am all set.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Thank you. That leaves me. My only issue is, well, I guess, did we get the porta potty issue resolved at
Oh, I forgot all about
at
that.
the Island Park? Did we
That
get the
was
porta potty issue
horrible.
resolved?
I saw the guys there in the truck.
The next
doing
morning.
stuff, Yeah.
Right on time.
Yeah.
It was.
On Monday
It
morning?
was,
But here's the question. Do we know that they were emptied on Friday and it's just so many people there, or were they?
We don't know that they were emptied on Friday, but I will check tomorrow to be emptied on Friday. Do we know, do we have them scheduled now on Friday? Because it's supposed to be Mondays and Fridays.
I haven't heard back. I will call again tomorrow.
Okay,
Please,
they
it was
were
really
there on
bad.
Monday morning cleaning it out.
I'm sorry?
They were there on Monday
Okay.
morning cleaning out.
Sounds like,
Okay.
sounds like a crappy
So
situation.
you all know my
Right across the
favorite
belt of
pet
rim.
peeve about the Island Concert Series is I sat in Cumberland Farms on Sunday and I watched people go to the bathroom, not literally.
Whoa,
Well, you know, so
stalker.
Whoa.
so people, there were 2 cars parked at the direct end of the sidewalk, which means that if someone is in a wheelchair,
Yeah,
they cannot access the porta potties unless they go into the road.
they can't go off the end there.
If someone's in a wheelchair or a walker, they have to walk on the road. There were 2 cars parked. I took a picture. I didn't get a good angle of it, so you just see the end of the sidewalk, and there's 2 cars parked in front of the porta potties.
So maybe we'll just put some cones out.
So, well, you have put cones out, so I'm gonna ask that if we can have the highway department put sawhorses up so that they can't be moved easily. So that's just, I can't direct one, but I just would like a consensus that we block the end so it makes the porta
You put
potties,
sawhorses up. How is the wheelchair gonna get in?
you can block it off so that they have the access. You can't, if you have a car parked at the end of the sidewalk, they have to go off the edge of the sidewalk, out into the road. Granted, it's the little curb, and then they have to go around that.
We solved it on the first concert that was held. If somebody sees it, they report it, they do an announcement with the
And they
plate
take-
number, and they tell them, you have to
You
move
have
your
to
car
move
right
it.
now, or it's gonna get towed. So if you see one, you could probably, if you're
Right,
just
announce it.
driving by and see it, you could probably text to Joe or to Pat, who's there, and we'll get on there, we'll announce it and say, I know,
That's the-
but see, taking the picture and talk about now. 'Cause
Well-
if we tell people you're parked in a handicap spot and your car's gonna get towed, they'll move them.
They'll move it.
Yeah, and it was like, boom.
And Dickie
Done.
should also know
I'm gonna
about it.
say, I will reiterate
Yeah,
to
and we have-
Officer Paulus,
Yep.
because he's our regular guy.
And
All right.
we will enforce.
It's just my pet peeve, and
Okay.
it's
No, when we saw it, we
For
said,
years.
no, and I just, that's my
If nobody
only.
sees it, and
Well, they see it.
I don't mean that. If they don't see him parking there, and it doesn't have a no parking sign.
No, it doesn't. That's why, I mean, put a.
But if we had a
stake
no
in-
parking sign in that area,
or do not block.
Anyways, that'd be like a oxymoron, don't block, but it's a porta
You know how
potty.
to paint?
So,
Orange
You know how to
spray.
paint?
That's my
They'll
pet
still do
peeve,
it.
and
You know how to
that's
paint?
it. I have nothing else.
The one thing they
Just
listen
paint
to
it on
is,
the
we'll
grass.
tow your car if
Jeannie?
you don't
No
move it.
parking.
Jeannie?
yeah.
Before we end and go into non-public, I think we're a little ahead of schedule and Tim needs to speak to you about something since you're not going to meet next week.
Sure. You have 14 minutes.
Hopefully I won't take that long. This is regarding, if you recall, the radio communications, and I had discussed that at some point I'd be coming back to the board to talk about the communications up to Spalding. And we now have a full quote. Chief Pizer and I spoke with the company yesterday, outlined what their plans were. They were out today doing tests for coverage. And so we now have a quote between the, so I'll explain what it does, but there's one portion of the quote that's dealing with some things that the dispatch and the chief believes that we need here, which is another speaker and some equipment so that we can be piping in fire and emergency services at the same time as they've got other speakers on. So that's a smaller portion, but essentially what this will do is this will set up a synchronous relay between Spalding, which will be our primary, and we'll be moving our primary equipment from Belknap Tower to Spalding Tower, which has better and stronger coverage for this area. And then at the same time, when they're at Belknap, they'll be putting in a different type of equipment so that our primary tower broadcast will be from Spalding. And I guess at the time that this was originally designed, the Spalding Tower wasn't built. And then when we went through the design phase, the quotes for radio communications were probably a little more than double what they ended up coming down to, because a lot of things were taken out. And some of that was the redundancy and reliability of the communications gear. So what this does for us is that this gives us the type of additional coverage we need. And more importantly, it gives us the strength of signal. So where Belknap is so far away, even though the signal can reach, say, a building, it may not penetrate the walls of the building because the signal is too weak at that point. Whereas at Spalding, we'll have much better penetration into buildings for radio communications. So in any event, and this was part of the original plan. I'm expressing a little bit more about the activities and tasks that would be required to do this. But the total for that, with all the services and equipment and the moving of equipment and putting up on Spalding, so all told would be $34,600. So a total of $35,765 is what would be required. And I think it's really important that we act on this immediately, because we have determined that there are some coverage holes, and different from what we had before. But this should solve that type of problem, and at the same time complete the communications that we really should have had from the get-go from the original plan. So in terms of money, I believe we're going to have sufficient money left over in the fund to be able to do this, but I just got the quotes this afternoon as I was sitting here and reviewing them. And so I need to go through and make sure that we have that. I believe we're going to be just fine, but what I was wondering if the board would be open to making a motion to proceed forward with this plan, and contingent on the fact that we have the money in the fund to be able to complete it.
Pat?
Explain to me what the dispatch, you said something about fire.
Yeah, they requested, dispatch requested some gear in the dispatch center here. The communications supervisor and the chief recommended adding some equipment so that they could be piping in the fire communications all the time on a separate speaker, fire and emergency services.
Why?
So.
We don't dispatch for fire.
No, it's so that they can better coordinate. That portion of it was $1,165.
Is that so they can respond?
Perhaps the chief could explain it better. She could explain it better. But in any event, the part that I really need the approval on, or else we're going to be looking at a pretty significant delay, and I don't think we want to. So that's 34,600 if you want to remove the dispatch for now.
I just want to know more about it. I don't want to remove it. I just want to, I'll make a motion to approve your.
35,765.
However, I want to know more about, all of it.
Yeah,
but I want to know
that's all
more
of it.
about what's going on in the communications dispatch about fire.
Ruggles second.
There's a motion and a second. John had his hand up, so we'll put that under discussion.
So we're eliminating the Belknap Tower?
No, so the repeater on Belknap is the strength of it is what we need to, rather than buying a whole new one, we want to move that over to Spalding. So in its place will be a repeater. It's just this repeater is the premium one, if you will. So we want to put it on the best tower for coverage, which would be Spalding, which we have no presence on Spalding now, but we have the approval for that. At the same time, there's some licensing for the I can't remember the term, but basically syncing up the time, because this will be a synchronous transmission. So it'll go out from the different towers when they broadcast.
Is that the fire tower that's up on Spalding?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know, I'm a little confused because I thought once we put the tower in here, we were going to eliminate that. So now we'll have, I'm concerned we spent a lot of money on that
We
tower
did.
out there.
We did.
And all the stuff to broadcast so that we wouldn't have any holes in here. And then we upgraded last year our Belknap tower so that we wouldn't have any holes in the system. Now we're also expanding to Spalding to make sure.
That's correct.
And we're the smallest town in the state.
And how many people are going to
I don't.
bounce off of us after we expand over to Spalding?
I really don't have an answer for that. I can tell you that that this equipment is needed, and I wouldn't bring it to you if it weren't. I apologize for the late notice, but I just don't want to miss a meeting where we're out 2 weeks. So and keep in mind that I don't think any of us were aware of what was taken out in the original communications package. And I ended up inheriting this in the January timeframe. So I really can't answer, what was the original intent and how did that differ between the first quote that we got from them and then it got pared back. But the Belknap as the primary tower is not the optimum for the penetration into these areas.
Still need Belknap then? I mean, are we consulting with anybody else on this? Because we keep putting money into antennas, towers, upgrading stuff every year. It's like
The-
$40,000.
Well, no,
past
we
few
haven't
years.
spent as much as that, but there was one investment that we made that was probably ill-conceived. And that was on an existing tower that was about, I think it was about $4,500 or so, $5,000 that was something that that was done under the former administration. So.
And what's on this tower?
So maybe what I should do is, I'm not an expert in this, and you have to realize this is something I'm trying to find the fix for. So maybe what I should do is, so that you have all the information, I'll see if the communications company can come in and speak to you at your next public meeting.
Is there anybody else we can consult with? Because $35,000, if it's the same company that's led us different
Yeah,
ways.
Chief Sitar would be a good person
Well,
to consult.
Not a person that works in enforcement or fire, but somebody who actually does the type of work, or a different contractor. Because $40,000 to come in a couple minutes, make that decision based on one bid over, that
Well,
is tough for me.
So the challenge we're going to have, and I don't disagree with you on face value, but the challenge we're going to have is that we've invested $257,000 in the solution that we have. They're the ones that have done the study of where the holes are. They were today testing Caliph, driving through town, doing every 15 seconds a radio check, and monitoring that throughout the whole area, and determined that Caliph is not at all suitable for our coverage. It does really nothing for us.
This is police.
Can we make sure we're talking into the microphones, please?
Yes, this is only police. This is only for police. But so where this leaves us is that when I discovered earlier in the process that we were really reliant on the one Belknap tower, that we did not have the redundancy that I thought we should have, and Spalding coming online gives us that redundancy. So as I mentioned before, the idea was to have microwave communications between this tower and Spalding, which is a direct line of sight, and then a repeater on Spalding. The strongest repeater that we have, the best repeater that we have, is on Belknap. And that's why they were recommending to move that if we have access to Spalding, so which was granted to us. So in any event,
But we've already put in $270,000 into our investment
Mhm.
here in this new PD.
Microphone, please. I'm sorry. I don't want to get yelled at by Gail.
Let's move on,
Whoa.
please.
Call the question, please. I'm satisfied with that answer.
All right.
Did you hear me?
Yeah. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passes.
thank you.
Can we look into, see if we can dump the Belknap County Tower? Because I can't imagine why the smallest town in New Hampshire spent $275,000 on an antenna out there. We've got another one that we spend money on for years up on Gunstock, and we're getting another one on Spalding. There's something wrong there. I would like to have some kind of information as to if we can get rid of Belknap County or reduce our cost.
I'll see about that. It does also cost us an annual fee to be on that tower.
Mhm.
that was something that was very important to the former chief to be there. I believe we were the only local agency up there. So
If we don't need it, you know, and we can work with like the Spalding and ours.
Right.
No sense in keeping that on our budget in Belknap or even remounting stuff up there. Maybe we can just move that over here, see if it works or something.
we'll definitely look into
Save
that.
some money.
All set? Thank you, Tim. I make a motion to enter non-public session per RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee, or the disciplining of such employee, or the investigation of any charges against him or her, unless the employee affected, 1, has a right to a public meeting, and 2, requests that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted, and RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, B, the hiring of any person as a public employee. We expect to be back into public session at approximately 9 p.m. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe Jessman,
Third by Constantino.
third by Constantino.
Did you hear me?
Just want to make sure the minutes get recorded, Pat. She lives closer to me than she does you. I need a roll call vote.
Constantino, yes.
Chessman, yes.
Pyra, yes.
Ruggles, yes.
Scanlon, yes.
We're gonna do the.
This conference will now be recorded.
Back in public session, I make a motion to seal the minutes of the non-public minutes of number 1 and number 3, because we didn't do number 2, of July 29th, 2021, because the reasons justifying the need for the non-public session still remain.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next we have a couple of action items that we have to do for the town administrator.
Just quickly, Executive Counselor Kenny would like to hold the gas, that's the Governor's Advisory Commission on Intermodal. That date work for the board?
Yes,
Yes.
What, is it in September?
October.
October? Oh, even better.
Yes.
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 Well, what about the fire and EMS?
Well, is there any, I'll do the RSVP if.
Oh, okay, yes, fine, that's good. Go ahead, Joe.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all those in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Aye. The time, 9:30. You have to hit stop, please.
Selectmen,